is A&B Convo's Wrestling Edition. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. I'm talking about A&B Convos, Marked by Wrestling, the Coalition. Yes, indeed. It is the podcast. And I'm excited.
I'm excited too. I mean, it's been a minute.
It has been a minute. We've seen a lot, we've heard a lot, and we do have some thoughts. Marked by Wrestling, my brother, I see you've got a championship belt over that shoulder.
I do.
Let me know what's going on.
Just keep it's my emotional support title. We've been through it, over the break, and we're all processing the post-traumatic TKO syndrome, and just trying to keep things memories of a happier time, and doing what we can. I got my Four Horsemen shirt on. I'm I'm in a safe place right now. So let's have fun.
I was in Los Angeles recently, and I was a guest. I was so humbled that I was allowed to come on to the Marked by Wrestling show. And I held that very title on this shoulder. And I got to tell you, that was always my favorite IC title. Always. Even when they changed the color of the strap, I love that design.
Yeah, some things don't need to be messed with all that much. There's one of my favorite TV shows was 30 Rock. And like in the first episode, I think Tina Fey says to Alec Baldwin's like, "Oh, you're one of those guys who takes something that isn't broken and fixes it." And I think wrestling can be that way, and it's not best moments, and title designs is one of them.
I'll throw in some, now that I know you're a 30 Rock guy. That was one of my favorite shows too. I don't remember all of the references. It's been a while since I've seen it, but there were a couple of episodes that I liked. Like there was that high def camera where they walked in front of it, and it was a younger Alec Baldwin.
Oh my gosh!
Yes,
you remember that one? And then I forget the page. He walked in front of it, and he was just like he was a puppet.
He was a Muppet.
Oh yes! Oh my gosh!
I love it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That was probably the best.
It was
episode.
The show was goated, but that's not what we're talking about today.
No, it's not.
B, who was sitting right beside me, what do we got on deck?
I thought that we could talk about some of the dropped storylines that have taken place recently. I feel like we've talked about this for a while, that they will start something and then they will just drop it like it never happened. Most recently, they did this with Bayley. They did this whole thing about her going back. They even did the hello. She was, flipping out back and forth. And then all of a sudden, she took some Lyra Valkyria and it cured her.
Lyra Valkyria.
So I guess that's what happened there. But, there's all kinds of storylines that I'm sure we could think of that they dropped. Some of them maybe they needed to, who knows? But I could think of a couple that I was pretty disappointed with. And so what I thought we would do is not only talk about the storylines, what they were when they dropped them, but then finish them ourselves with fantasy booking and what we would have liked to see happen. So I will start to give an example of something that I felt like so super excited about, and then they dropped it faster than I could even finish getting happy about it, was the Terror Twins. When we had Damian and Rhea as the Terror Twins helping each other out, and it was so exciting. I don't think I was the only person who liked that. And then all of a sudden they were just like, yeah, okay, drop that. What was it, a week later? I feel like it was like not even a week. And they were just like, we can't have a guy and girl faction. Let's just drop it. So what I think I would have liked to see there is the Terror Twins let R-Truth join with them, because he was always trying to join with the Judgment Day. And we could even call them the Terror Triplets. You know what I mean? With R-Truth. Or he could have kept thinking they were the Judgment Day when they weren't, or whatever. But with his comedic gold in the way that you wanted him and Damian, like how they are now, and they still don't really know what they're doing with Rhea. The story with Rhea and putting her with them, it's just very forced. I would love still, now that we have them, even with Keith Lee, I think you could insert Rhea in there and have a faction again, a good faction, an anti-Judgment Day, if you will. So that's what I would really like to see, is Rhea and Damian back together, R-Truth there. And I wouldn't mind having Keith Lee there too now that he's there. I think that would be fine. So I feel like that would be my first fix fantasy booking. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, actually I like that because they have not done. I can't believe I'm stumping for Damian Priest of all people right now, but like he has pretty much been forgotten, which is a weird thing to say about a recent tag team champion. Like, I mean, he just fell into the background, and he was when you win a world title at WrestleMania, you shouldn't be an afterthought on a weekly show, and I think that was probably the most getting that, on-screen time with Rhea for as short of a time as it was, apart from Judgment Day, was probably the most focus he really got. I mean, other than being world champion, which honestly, he had a really underrated world title reign too. Like his work was solid. It was good. He also, like, I want to give Damian Priest credit. Well, this is Damian Priest love episode here. I can't believe I'm doing this, but like his work was so good, because I remember all of us watching those matches and thinking he had botched himself into injury multiple times, and he worked everybody so good. Like on an episode of NXT this past week, Nathan Frazier, the Fraxium, showed back up, and Nathan Frazier had a speed match, and that man botched a superplex with 5 seconds left in the match, but it was like a fake botch. Like it was it was like leading into the finish of the match. And I'm like, you don't realize, like, we're so, the internet wrestling community is so obsessed with how smart they think they are, that they want to, criminalize and indict and accuse wrestlers of when they're wrong, that they totally get fooled when that kind of mistake in the ring is by design. And worst case scenario, he really did mess up and recovered it so well that he worked it into the selling of his match, which is the difference between a wrestler and a performer. And Priest is a wrestler, man. I give him all the credit in the world. And, when I see somebody who's got that kind of mentality and that approach to what they do, I want better things for them than just that. And it's not that they're pairing him with truth is a bad thing, but like clearly it's the, as younger generations say, that here, dang, like, mentality with truth now. It's like, okay, we're not going to fire truth, but here's your truth thing. We're not going to actually do anything with it. And now, like, Priest is sucked into that vortex too of like, here's your thing. It's never going to mean anything to us, and like, he doesn't have to be Gunther or Cody, but he could, there's more he can give, I should say. So anyway, yeah, about that. For me, there was, there were two angles I was sitting there trying to think about, one really old, one modern. I won't go into detail on both of them. I will just say the old one was there was a famous trashed main event feud between a heel Jake the Snake and Hulk Hogan, where Jake the Snake, legend has it, hit Hogan with a DDT on the Snake Pit, and but to hear Jake tell it and others, the crowd reacted the wrong way. And they were cheering for Jake, and he was like, and this was like peak Hogan money time, and they're like, no, we can't screw up the Hogan money train, because that screws up all of our money trains. So we're throwing that feud in the trash, and that segment is never going to see the light of day.
Oh wow!
But with a real what if there though. But currently, since most of the people who frequent your channel and your podcast probably don't go that far back, I'll give one that's more recent. Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu. in the midst of leading up to this past year's WrestleMania, and before Elimination Chamber, Drew was still Drew was champion, and then Jacob comes back, and there's a whole mess. You could do a whole episode on dropped Jacob Fatu storylines, probably, but
Right.
There was a brief moment when Jacob had come back, cost Cody the title, going after Drew, which was a pretty well done cage match. The way that finish worked out and the logic behind it was really good. Cody and Jacob had a sit-down face-to-face interview as they were leading into, what was going to be Elimination Chamber and WrestleMania and all that stuff. And we got what we got out of it. And it wasn't terrible, but it could have been better too. And Jacob, that's one of the first real sit-down, like Jacob has a criminal history kind of in front of the camera things. It's not like it was a big secret, but they didn't really use TV time to delve into it until then for the first time. And Cody, in full, 1985 flair, this suit cost more than your house get up, is sitting there across from him and essentially delivering hard truth bombs to Jacob Fatu that really it's not face or heel. It's just, how do you as a human being feel about one man talking to another like that? Yeah. And that's what determines who's the face and heel in this situation. And it is uncharted territory. Uncharted. I mean, it's been uncharted for a while. I want to go back to maybe like Brett and Shawn Attitude Era, where it's just two guys saying how they feel about each other and the fans decide who they want. And Jacob was doing, I came from EBT to WWE. And Cody's like, the reason you don't have the opportunities you have in life that I have is because you made the choices that put you where you are. And that's not wrong, right?
Right.
But also, that's fighting words. It is what it is, right? And so I feel like, it felt like Cody and Jacob, or Cody and Drew, all that felt like just a placeholder that they never intended to go that deep into, because they knew who they wanted for WrestleMania. And I'm not anti-Randy or anything like that either. Like, it's one of the downsides of having a lot of main event talent that could fill that role at once. But I feel like they didn't even let that breathe long enough to realize how special they could have had something. Because now we've got Jacob and Roman, which a year and a half ago we would have been salivating over. But now Jacob has become like, I don't know how many of y'all listen to this would remember like pre-dancing Rikishi, but like I'm going to make a difference in my community Rikishi. It was a very short-lived, not over gimmick. Yeah. It's I'm going to be a positive babyface who came from the hood. And like in real life, those are wonderful men. The world needs more people like that. For wrestling, it's a little toothless, Yeah. And I feel like the Samoan Werewolf is getting a little more toothless. And one of the reasons I blame, and AJ, I feel like I'm going to be speaking your language here. The curtain's being pulled back too far on who these men and women are in the public space while they're active competitors. The Stephanie McMahon podcast might be one of the worst things for wrestling right now. And it's actually a very, very good podcast. Like in a bubble. Yeah. I love seeing Trick Williams give his testimony and tell his story for an hour and a half. And like, I resonate with it. I'm like, this is amazing. But you know what? I don't want to boo that man anymore.
Right.
I'll never want to boo that man anymore. Like, they used to do the Chronicle stuff, back when we still had WWE Network. We didn't know what we had, Lord. We didn't know what we had. But that's how I fell in love with Bianca Belair as a performer. Yes. Like watching that with my daughter, seeing her talk about her struggles with anxiety and stuff. And then like that weekend is when she, beat Sasha Mercedes at that WrestleMania. Like they aired at that time. I'm like, I will never boo this woman again in my life because I know who she is as a woman. And like, they're losing the plot with the fact that we're supposed to believe things about these people that aren't true when they're on screen. And when we
Right.
fall in love with them as people, you can't boo them anymore. And like, you're robbing us of that entertainment. So like, if it were to me, like, I would say let that Cody Jacob feud be what it is. And like, because I thought, people like Cody heel turn. And I've always been one of the voices that's like, shut up. He will turn heel when he's ready and he will knock it out of the park, because he is kind of a dork, kind of a jerk. Like, I mean, not a jerk, but like he'll do the role well. That's all I'm going to say when it's time. But the fans, like, they shouldn't turn Cody heel until the fans are ready to reject him. And like, if you do that, that would have been a great baby step in that direction. And I feel like maybe they knew that could happen, and they don't want to kill the golden goose. It's that Hogan Jake thing, but they have a lot of golden gooses, so they could have dipped their toe in it and see what happened. So anyway, yeah, all that. And like, I think that like this whole parade of podcasts that WWE and TKO have taken away, but like they've really like yanked it from the Chris Van Vliets of the world, the Conrad Thompsons of the world, from y'all, from others. Like, one of the things I loved when I got in as a listener to wrestling podcasts with Conrad Thompson was his show with Bruce Pritchard. When Bruce wasn't working for the company, they never talked about the current product. All they did was revisit old stuff. And it's great to pull back the curtain when you're talking about people who don't wrestle anymore. Yep. And it's never going to impact what you're watching now. Like, I don't still hate the Honky Tonk Man. I mean, maybe a little bit, but like, it's okay for me to listen to like, oh, he was actually a real sweetheart, or whatever. Like, he was easy to work with, whatever. Mm-hmm. But like, I'm never going to be able to boo Royce Keys. Right. And he could be a monster. He could be a monster heel if they want him to be. Just look at the man. But now what? And so like this and like Unreal. There are things about Unreal I think are good and things that I think are bad. But yeah, this like, let me show you the real person for active competitors, I think is very dangerous. And I think at its core, WWE, and this is part of the reason too, I think about modern storylines or whatever, doing things wrong. I think they're too obsessed with going viral, and going viral only benefits you for like a few days. Yeah. And they're not investing long term in the impacts of their stories. And that feels like the mission statement of a corporation, not of wrestling people. Like, and so I think people who came up in the business, your Triple H's, your Shawn Michaelses, all these guys, I'm not saying they're just being handcuffed and not being allowed to work the way they want to. Maybe they are complicit, but I think there's a part of them, at least though, that's kind of like, let's let this stuff breathe for a while. Like, let's actually build something and sell something, but yeah, anyway, that was a whole lot of words, I know, but, that was great. Stories breathe. Let stories breathe.
And it's supposed to be we, the people, not all about the top, like you said, like Stephanie, you don't need a podcast for sure. And you're right. There's so many of us out here doing podcasts, and then you're interviewing the current stars. Like, you're right. There's no room for competition with that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it's like, you already have everything. Can you leave the podcast for the little guys? But
yeah. Or even just interview Hall of Famers, or, people who aren't going to be factored into your current product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many that you could interview that are not, no longer on the roster or active, like you said. So what is your 2 cents, Mr. Hammond?
What was the original question again?
I asked you if you were to take like your favorite storyline that was just dropped, whether it's because they went another direction or whether because they just fired the person in the middle of the storyline. And then if you could fantasy book it, how you would have finished it out. So it could be a Karrion Kross or a Kairi Sane too.
I've said this several times on our show. when we go live, we have people in the chat and we see these storylines. And I'm somebody that, when I graduated high school, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And I knew I wanted to go into higher education. I just wasn't sure what field I wanted to go in. And there was a friend of mine in high school that started to film with a camcorder, video camera, like Clark Griswold in European Vacation. Nothing salacious, but I looked at that and I'm like, wow. So I started to experiment. I asked my grandmother for a camcorder. She bought me one, and I experimented with a couple of things. And I said, I really like this. And so, but I wasn't sure I wanted to go into it because I also went to cooking school, and because I had to decide to be a chef. Then I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go into this. So I really wanted to kind of figure that out. And I remember sitting down in my room on a Saturday afternoon, just channel surfing, not sure what I was looking for, but nothing was catching my eye until something did. It was a movie. I couldn't even tell you what it was to this day. I just specifically remember saying, okay, it's got my attention. And I watched it to the end. And that ending blew me away in a bad way, where I said, why would you end the film like that? That makes no sense. And it's very reminiscent. The most recent thing I can think of is I Am Legend. And if anybody ever watched the movie I Am Legend, there is an alternate ending to that movie. And that alternate ending, per Will Smith, and we knew this already, but he has now corroborated this. The alternate ending was the original ending to that movie. And apparently it didn't test well. Yeah, exactly. And it didn't test well, according to him, with audiences. So they decided to do some reshoots. And I was infuriated to learn that, because when I watched this movie, it's like you had this, you have this, I'll use this as an example. You have this thread that just makes sense. It makes sense. And all of a sudden you decide to go, you know what? No, we're going to take this, we're going to stick something else on, and we're going to make it, and the people are going to love it. And it makes no sense. The ending of that film didn't make any sense. And when I saw the alternate ending, I looked at her and I said, what the freak?
Right. This is the ending of the movie.
Why in the world did you,
This is how it should have ended.
So I was
I Am
infuriated.
Legend means I am the monster.
So the reality is that's why I ultimately decided, because I watched that film in my room, I decided to go to film school. I said I have to understand this process. And I'm so glad that I did, because I had many an argument with my teachers over several things as far as creativity goes, as far as why certain things need to be written a certain way. And it was glorious. But I was bullheaded in my belief that you've got to make sense, a story. And I'm in class and you're telling me this is a story structure, and I'm hearing you, and speaking of movies, his White Man Can't Jump. I forget which was which, but I'm listening to Jimmy, but are you hearing Jimmy? Like, are you hearing me? Right? That's how I feel about the WWE. If you've watched any interviews, if you've listened to wrestlers speak, they will tell you that at the end of the day, it's about us telling stories. We're telling stories with our bodies. We're telling stories behind the scenes that will now lead to the culmination of WrestleMania 3, And my biggest complaint is they will take stories, and we've seen this for years, where Vince McMahon would come in, an hour before a Raw and just tear up the script and just put pen to paper and start jotting and say, okay, this is what we're doing. And in our logical minds, you can't just, I'm sorry to be crass, but you can't piss on my shoe and tell me that it's raining and just accept that this is what it is. You cannot start something and not finish something. There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. And you had mentioned Jacob Fatu, and this is a perfect example where you're constantly interjecting him into different things, and it's like sticking spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. And that's just not how this is supposed to go. With a company as tenured as WWE, with the money that it has, and you're telling us how much money you have. And I'm sure that's not even the tip of the iceberg of what you have, but you're talking about the biggest gate constantly coming in. We got the biggest gate ever, the biggest gate ever. You got a $5 billion with a B, not M, a B, billion 5-year deal, meaning you've got $1 billion a year with Netflix. You have the resources available to you. You have now shown us Unreal 2 seasons worth, where you've got a whole room of people with Triple H at the head of that table, all creatives. You've got a whiteboard. You guys are literally jotting down ideas and at the same time coming up with much of nothing.
And do you have a story example?
A story. Well, I will say, let's go there.
Please do.
Let's go there.
You digressed a little bit.
Okay. No, I didn't digress. I'm simply saying, if you want to go there, let's go with The Rock. All right. I'm not going to go on my diatribe. I'll simply say this.
Exhibit A.
There are, Your Honor, this whole damn court is out of order. You cannot have a man like that who is a TKO board member interject himself into something in advance where the crowd and the audience worldwide has been clamoring for a Rock versus Roman matchup. And that's all well to the good. But what WWE decides to do is make Cody Rhodes the man to win certain events that now places him in a position to face Roman Reigns. And then you decide to interject yourself and literally have a conversation with him and say, I need you to step aside because this is what the people want to see. That doesn't work right out of the gate because, again, I've said this many times on our show, the whole point of winning a match is to become a number one contender for a title. The whole point of winning the Royal Rumble so that you can face your choice of champion, the whole point of a Money in the Bank briefcase match so that you now have a contract to face a champion of your choosing. This is the point. You cannot come in there and just say, yeah, no, we're going to do something else. Okay, folks, I'm The Rock, and this is what's going to go down. And then we have the hashtags coming in. And then you've got to pivot, which is what they ultimately did. And then you set up the idea that you're going to be at the grandest stage of them all. And let's be clear here. That is what happened. And what happened instead is the person that you had us with. You had John Cena, The Rock, Travis Scott standing there, looking tall, the Mama Rhodes belt or whatever the heck it was. This is now ingrained in the minds of the wrestling fans. And for whatever the reason that we may never know truly what it really was, that did not come to fruition. That was probably, in my mind, one of the biggest fumbles that they've done. We went to WrestleMania in Las Vegas last year, and we, amongst the thousands of fans, were sorely disappointed in the way that happened. We were sorely disappointed with John Cena turning heel the way that he did, forcing it down our throats in a way that just did not feel genuine, and then doing an immediate about-face based off of one promo from Cody Rhodes. And it just frustrates me to no end when you have a company this old, with this much money, with this much creative, and you're showing us the months and months in advance of planning, and you're telling me this is the best that you can give us. This is the end result. And I've said this on our show many times, and I'll end with this. To me, this is the presentation of a fantastic, delicious, your favorite meal served on a garbage can lid, presented to the audience. And we're at a point now where we are paying way too much money for these tickets. We're paying out the wazoo for all of these different streaming services for you to present to us a storyline that seems half-baked on a garbage can lid. And just saying, here, enjoy. We know that this is not appetizing, and we quite frankly don't really care. And we were just watching last night, right after SmackDown. They did the Made in America, which because we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of America. And there was one of those segments in that show where Stephanie McMahon was talking about the Give Divas a Chance era, if you will, when you had a 90-second Divas match and the crowd finally had enough. And we had seen also other examples where the entire McMahon family was out there saying, we have not been doing a very good job for you all. We hear you, and we're going to make some changes. And you do that briefly, and you add some stuff to like here. It's like Martin and Gina, when Martin was proposing to Gina originally, and he's like, okay, will you marry me? Damn. Are you happy now? You know, that's what I feel like we're getting from them. Not wanting to do this, not lovingly, and we're all parents in here. When you've told one kid to apologize to your other kid and they really don't want to do it, they're like, I'm sorry. Say it like you mean it. I'm sorry. No. We're getting the Gina, damn, are you happy now? And I'm not satisfied with any of that. And we didn't get any explanation really from The Rock that was satisfying as far as, and I was watching him when he was on Pat McAfee's show, and he looked irritated that he even had to justify coming on Pat McAfee to tell us anything. And I'm like, dude, at the end of the day, you don't wrestle in a vacuum. You're doing this for the crowd. You're doing it for us, like our podcast and like your podcast. You have an obligation to the audience to give them something that they want to see. We can do it our way, but if nobody's going to see it, who cares? We have to accept the criticism, and we have to pivot a little bit to a point where people are going to want to watch this. And it frustrates me that that doesn't happen.
All right, so I just want to say we were not frustrated with John Cena's heel turn. I like John Cena's heel turn. I didn't think he should have kept his bright, sparkly clothes and changed the shirt. I thought he should have went like black and white and dark. But I liked his heel turn. I felt like it was fine to me. The turnabout after Cody's speech was stupid, but that I agree with. But I didn't have a problem with the heel turn. My second, because I think we have time for two, and then you could rebut on that too. I just want to add mine, and then you could comment on his and add another one. I'm going to say, I want to go back and forth because Karrion Kross, I really didn't understand why they needed to drop Karrion Kross. Like we were all like, please give us Karrion Kross. And then they just dropped him. And then I thought, well, they're dropping him because they already have Zelina and Alistair, so they don't want to have two. And then they dropped them too. So I'm like, well, okay, I don't know. You don't want to do any of the goth husband and wife stuff. I'm not really, because really they're all gold. And so that I did not understand. Oh, now I lost my train of thought. I got derailed.
Wasn't my fault.
If I have to pick just one more, I think that I would go with Karrion and Scarlett. I think that was something that really they could have figured out. The NXT Karrion and Scarlett was absolute gold. There's no reason you couldn't have just brought that back. We knew what worked. Shouldn't have never changed it. When he first came back and you snuck him back, the crowd was super excited with the hourglass, and he did it to Roman. And then y'all just dropped that. And then he couldn't win. He couldn't get over unless his wife helped him cheat. I mean, you ruined him. You ruined him. And I really think that they could have found a way to capture that and fix that and bring that back. So I would have liked to see them actually do that and bring it to fruition with what was going on. Was it Sammy that they were harassing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really, they haven't known what to do with Sammy. It would have been great if they would have ultimately brainwashed Sammy and got Sammy to join, because they didn't know what to do with Sammy. And I feel like that really would have been a great storyline. If I would have written that out, I would have had them successfully conquer Sammy fall in line and become kind of the evil whatever, like they did with Randy for a while when he fell in line with Bray. That would have been my booking. On to you, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, Kross, like kind of what Sammy's going through now is sort of still a continuation of what he was dealing with Karrion. Like what we're seeing with him now as a heel is like him not so much turning evil as just giving up on being good. And like that, I mean, which is in its own way turning heel, right? But like, and yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Karrion was getting at the whole time. And so I kind of appreciate at least that Sammy is still dealing with that story, even though Karrion's not there and Alistair's not there. That whole thing is so messy because I see multiple sides of it. And like, I've stopped trying to get in conversations with people I don't know online about this because you can always tell people's life experiences based on how they argue these sorts of things. Yes. But I've worked as the entry level grunt. And I have worked as the manager. So like, I know both of those perspectives. I work so hard and you don't see what I do and I know my worth. Boy, we hear that phrase all the time. And I also know you might know your worth, but we don't have money for your worth. So I can't pay you what you're worth. So you can leave if you want to go find your worth somewhere, or I'm not doing you dirty. This is literally just the best I can do. Because if I pay you what you're worth, then I have to pay Randy what he's worth. And I have to pay Cody what he's worth. And like, once I get into this, I can't pay everybody. People got to go, or whatever. And so that doesn't mean suck it up, Karrion, or anything like that. Like, I mean, like, that's just the hard crossroads of life. Like, if you feel like you deserve more, you might be right. But the more you deserve might have to be gotten somewhere else. Like, and that's why I really respect wrestlers who put on at least a mature face about it and don't burn those bridges. Like, I don't feel like Kross has burned that bridge. I feel like I sympathize a lot with Kross and Scarlett because I feel like he was honest, but not bitter. And that's a hard road to walk when you haven't been done well. And so like the truth is with Kross and Scarlett, he had that whole thing with AJ Styles and the Hall of Fame weekend and WrestleMania. And he had those shoot promos where maybe there was a little miscommunication and he got over fast. And a whole relic from the old Vince era is don't get over without permission. Like they tell you to get over, but don't get over without permission. If they've got somebody else they want to get over instead, or else you're in trouble,
and LA Knight.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Zack Ryder back in the day, and so he becomes, not only does he get over, but he becomes a good merch seller, which that is where your negotiating power is. So like when it comes time to negotiate, he wants to get in the weeds, according to Kross. Like he's like, I want to understand your offer because I want to know, let's look at how much I've sold because we can point tangibly to how much I'm worth to you. And they didn't want to have that conversation. I can understand when the wheels keep moving in a company, it feels a little annoying when an employee wants to like get in the weeds because you don't have time for weeds. And if they weren't already in your plan, like if Roman had that question for them, they're like, sure, Roman, why not? Because Roman's a proven commodity. And listen, that's not fair. Okay. That's not fair to Karrion or Scarlett.
And Karrion knows it because when we took that picture and he was like, I'm going to hand you the title. I said, I'm going to have Roman hold the title. And Karrion said to me, why not? They give all the titles to Roman. I was like, oh.
Yeah, right. So
okay,
exactly.
Karen.
So you're like, yeah. I'm like, listen, it's a competitive business. Like, and so they know it and they're all aware of it. And it's not even like I've got beef with Roman. It's just like, why don't they see me like they see you? I take as many bumps as you do. I actually probably take more bumps than you do because you're a part-timer, basically, and all this stuff. So I was really mad for Karrion when he said, one, they only gave me 24 hours to look at my deal. And 2, they did not offer Scarlett. They said, we'll deal with her after we lock you up. And I'm like, I know exactly what that means. Like,
Right.
that means she's out. Like, and
Right.
once we have you,
Right.
we have you. And so, like, I don't blame him for going on. But, like,
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, Karrion was doing the best promo work of at least of his WWE career. I didn't follow him before he showed up in NXT, so I don't know. But, like, the best promo work he's ever been doing. And Scarlett was, you know, I mean, she was doing what they asked of her. I mean, so
Right.
I mean, you know, and she was knocking that out.
Right.
So when they left, I imagine the TKO-ishness of it was like, well, we've got Karrion at home, looking at Alistair and Zelina, but Alistair's not Karrion. Like, and listen, as somebody who I like Alistair. Like, I loved him in NXT. Like, speaking of talent who we lost and went on, this is another performer talk for another time, but Velveteen Dream,
Ooh.
him and Aleister Black together did crazy work. Now listen,
Yeah.
Yes.
anybody who recognizes that name that I brought up, we all know why, okay? And there are arguments and
Yeah.
discussions and rumors and allegations and things left unsaid. But whatever. The thing is that Aleister isn't the total package level of performer that Karrion is. Maybe he can do a little more in ring, but they didn't. I'm sure they weren't looking at him that way. They were like, "Here's a guy we can get away with paying less and still have, and still carry this kind of story because he's basically the same
Right.
character." Which he's not really, basically. You know what I mean? But like, I'm thinking
Yeah.
from their perspective, right? And then they dumped them too. So I'm just like, what are we doing here? You know, like, so Karrion could have done some great stuff. It would have been fun to not necessarily go full faction again, like Final Testament or whatever it was, but like, just, you know, just give him a little more to work with, would have been great. And yeah, to AJ's point, the whole Rock thing, man, like, it's just an absolute mess. And I've come off of blaming the Rock as much these days as just a complete fundamental misunderstanding of the respect of the paying wrestling audience, because the story now is like, oh, well, DJ, can you show up at Elimination Chamber so we can sell a few more tickets? Like, yeah. And if that's truly what happened, and he was just like, sure, man, I'll go sell some tickets. I'm a promo machine. You know, he's the Rock, for crying out loud.
Right.
That's not how it works in wrestling. We're not just trying to pop a number for tonight. If you show up tonight and do a thing, you better not go in and promising a thing down the road. And if you do, you better show up for that thing down the road. And like, just an absolute mess. So since we're like, I'm just ranting on reacting, I'll just say real quick, I'll just bring up Kyrie as the other one, because that's so recent and so fresh. Irked me so much. Listen, in the eyes, this is a hard truth, but the no pun intended, but the Kyrie is not Cody getting jilted at the Rumble. Kyrie is not R-Truth getting released from his contract. Like, it was wrong from a narrative standpoint to let her go when they did, without closing that thread, and that felt very un-Triple H like to me. Right. Which is why, like, people with bad agendas or bad intentions, like, want to say, I'm glazing Triple H or whatever, but like, he's a wrestling guy. Like, you don't just you don't just remove the focal point from a story before the story's done. You know what I mean?
Right. And it was one match. They could have just finished it at WrestleMania.
Well, and without writing it off either. Like, so it's very, very peculiar that happened the way that it did. So like, what I would have done, whether you wanted to keep Kyrie or not, and I know that Asuka, it seems apparent that she's just got some Asuka stuff going on back home, and so prayers for her, and make sure all that stuff's cool, and I hope she's good, because she is underappreciated for as much as she's accomplished in WWE at this point. So what I would have done in that situation, whether it was at Mania or not, I didn't have a problem with Io and Asuka being at Backlash, because they're like the only women there, like, so they actually get more of a spotlight, more time for their match. WrestleMania is not what it once was, in terms of spotlight. And the plus side of that is, if you get a spotlight at another show, you can still steal the show the way you would at Mania. You know, like you can probably negotiate for more attention. And I think those ladies got it at Backlash. That being said, I would have had Kairi turn on Asuka, but not align with Io. Just have her say, like, I'm my own woman. I would lead that to a triple threat between the three instead, and I'd have Kairi go over.
Yep.
I'd have Kairi beat Asuka. And at the end of the match, I would have, you know, maybe you could do it this way. I don't know, but I definitely would have had Kairi do to Io what Asuka did at the end of the match. Like, just a handshake, a hug, or whatever. Like, we're not friends, but you're not my enemy, you know?
Right.
And honestly, knowing what we know now about Asuka, like if I'm not allowed to change that real situation, have all three of them just like mutual respect among the three, tie it up, it's done. Like sometimes
yes,
with the right kind of wrestlers, winning the match will earn you the respect. That's all you need to do in that situation. And then if Kairi has to go, then Kairi has to go. And if Asuka needs time off, then she takes her time off. And you want to plug Io back with Rhea or
that time off into that, like her being beat could have been like, I need to leave and regroup or whatever. That could have worked into that.
Yeah, I mean, for decades and decades, taking an L has always led into a vacation for people. Like, I mean, So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
Let me just say this much: Karrion Kross and Scarlett were done wrong. NXT. I've said this many, many times. The thing that grinds my gears more than anything is seeing an NXT superstar in their bag get called up and then just change. The very things that you liked about them, you called them up for a reason. And then you decide to tweak those things. And it just blows my mind. I understand some things don't necessarily play the same way, like a Chase U wouldn't necessarily go over like it did in NXT, understandable. But when you have a Karrion Kross and a Scarlett that worked the way that it did, and then you decide to bring somebody up solo and gladiate them all of a sudden, in the minds of the fans, we're immediately saying, first off, where's your other half? Secondly, why are you dressed like that?
Right.
And nobody wants to see Karrion Kross come in here with a puffy shirt and look like a pirate. Okay? He doesn't want to look like a pirate. You know, it doesn't
Gore-Tex.
make any sense. You know, it has its place, just not on the main roster. But so that aside, when you did ultimately bring them back and bring them together, it didn't hit the way that it should have because, again, you fumbled the ball. You fumbled it. Now, is there a reasoning as far as money goes? Yeah, there's always an issue with that. And like,
we're out of time.
What? We're out of time? I just said to start. Okay.
I know. Just wrap it up.
Well, let me say this much. Stephen, you mentioned the coming in as a grunt, coming in as a manager. The thing that frustrates me, and I've talked with her about this as well, is the managers are not going to cut their $1 million salaries. They don't. Nobody cuts it up here. Nobody trims the fat up here. It's always down here. It's like, okay, we don't have the budget. We don't have the money. Yeah, you do. If you went ahead and really looked at the entire budget and made some tweaks and some changes. Maybe Karrion and Scarlett did cost more than Alistair and a Zelina. But the problem is, we, the fans, all we could see was a fake Temu, Scarlett, and Kross when it came to Alistair and Zelina. And you shot them in the foot because of that. And that's the problem with having a TKO in charge, that you are not boots on the ground. These are just numbers, and we have somebody that's similar. We can kind of make it work. And again, as old as WWE is, they should know better, and they should say, listen, this is not going to work. This is going to make matters worse. This is going to be an issue. And what happened? They got fired anyway. So it bums me out that this is the best that we got with what we have here. It's really frustrating.
All right. Sorry, you guys. We ran out of time. I know we could get really excited, and it's hard to be succinct when you're talking about stuff that you're passionate about. So I am thankful to Mark by Wrestling for coming in here and sharing some of his fantasy booking, the historian himself. You could check him every Tuesday night. Mark by Wrestling does NXT Watch Along. And our boy needs those hours. YouTube is tripping on his hours, y'all. So go check out some of his other great content. He has great content with his brother, talking about different wrestling throughout the ages and things like that. He's a wealth of knowledge. You have A&B Convos. We've been going live for everything, y'all, except for NXT. We're for Raw, for SmackDown, for TNA, for AEW. We trying to do it big. So anytime you want to watch along, pretty much anything wrestling these days, we're pretty much live for that. I just want to close out with, to me, the biggest botch that I still haven't gotten over, which was Bobby and the Street Profits. That was ridiculous. It was gold in your hands. It was gold. And y'all let it go.
It's gold, Jerry.
And so I'm just going to say that was dumb. That was really, really, really dumb. And I'll never forgive you for that. But in the meantime, we will be back next week for another podcast. And we appreciate you joining us for this one. You want to close this?
Thank y'all so much for joining us. We appreciate you. Each and every week, you can catch us live in a living color, Marked by Wrestling, live in a living color. That is it for us. Marked by Wrestling. Anything you want to close out with real quick?
Yeah, I'll see you guys on Tuesdays. And yeah, you never know when I'm popping up. Me and my brother, Mount Rushmore matches every so often. We're our next episode, whenever we get it out, because we have to align schedules. Brian Pillman. So little preview.
The controversial
All right.
one. The daddy of Lexus King. I can't wait to hear that. All right. Thank y'all so much for joining A&B Convos Wrestling Edition. Marked by Wrestling makes the coalition. We'll catch you all next time.